Good afternoon and welcome to the April 5th work session. Tonight leading the Pledge of Allegiance will be Mr. Holliday.
Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday. Good evening, everyone. We will, moment of silence tomorrow night. Ms. Michaels. Agenda, any discussion, additions? Consent agenda. Discussions, additions? Bless you. Okay, visitors tomorrow night. Mr. Odom, number 7.
Number 7 is facilities. Geotechnical consulting for John Coleman School and Roy Waldron School. Rutherford County Schools Engineering and Construction Department is not going to renew the contract with geotechnical consulting with Mr. Charles Irwin. The balance of the purchase order is approximately $45,000. Mr. Ed Seiler, who has worked with the engineering department in the past, will be used to complete geotechnical consulting on the John Coleman School and the Roy Waldron addition. Recommend approval. The motion is to award the contract for the balance of geotechnical inspections and consulting for John Coleman School and Roy Waldron addition to Ed Seiler.
I know that Mr. Seiler was involved in our Stewart's Creek. I remember seeing him at the high school quite often.
Yes, he had had some health issues, so he's feeling better now.
Good.
And my staff and I didn't feel like Mr. Irwin was following our policy as well as we'd like him to, so we're not renewing.
Yes, sir. Okay. B.
B is geotechnical exploration and consulting services for Smyrna Middle School addition and David Urey addition. Collier Engineering Company has submitted a proposal for geotechnical exploration and consulting services for design information related to the Smyrna Middle School addition and David Urey addition. The purpose of the services is to develop geotechnical parameters for earthwork and design of foundations, slabs, and pavements. The cost for these services at David Urey is $4,450 and Smyrna Middle School is $8,975 at a total of $13,425, and this is a professional service. Recommend approval of the motion to approve Collier Engineering Company for geotechnical exploration and consulting for David Urey addition and Smyrna Middle School addition at a total cost of $13,425. See, let me ask Mr. Clardy to talk about this a little bit. We are considering and looking at a 2-story design for middle schools. We even considered it up into maybe the new Rocky Fork one. Got back some estimated times from our architect and all, and the earliest we could, if we go to totally redesign, it was the 26th of July. Which throws us virtually impossible to start school with it. You're going to be in the middle in the year somewhere. Of course, the only thing with the middle school students is they've hooked to a band or an athletic team or a lot of other things, so it's not desirable. But anyway, let me just kind of yield to Mr. Clardy, and he can talk to you in a little more detail, and it'd be a good time for us to discuss it, how you feel about pursuing this.
Well, as we've discussed, or I've discussed with several of the board members at different times, we I've been encouraged to go to a two-story middle school because of several things. And one of them is there's less roof area by about 35%. It takes less property, and as property values are increasing, then that will mean our sites will cost less, or our sites won't be as large. There are some other advantages in our geothermal heating and cooling because of the under and over situation on the piping and those types of things. So there's several of the commissioners who have asked us about a two-story design because all the counties around us have gone to 2 stories, and that's because of the property values also. So we had considered that on Rocky Fork, but since we got such a late start, we've had the design money for a while, but for a while we weren't sure it was going to be funded. The school was, so we held off as long as we could, and it just got too late to do the 2-story design and get the school opened next year. And our discussions with the staff in here, Mr. Zago and Mr. Odom, it'd just be a nightmare for everyone involved. And even me, considering when y'all started getting all those phone calls, then I'd probably start getting a few. So we want to hold off on that. We had some money left on Eagleville. The construction there was a sizable sum. Mr. Sandvig is doing some amendments and working on that right now. And because that's a K-12 school out there, we can distribute those funds into elementary, middle, and high school. So we're going to take some of that money, put it over for the design on the next new middle school. So we'll go ahead and start working on that simultaneously with this other school. So when the other middle school comes up, we'll have the high school design from the slab up. So all we'll have to do is do the footing design for it to fit the site that we're going to put it on. So that's the plan. I'd like to hear comments from the board on that to if there's anything I'm overlooking or if there's anything you could add, I'd like to hear it.
Personally, I think it's a good idea. Save us on maybe buying some more property down the road.
How much savings are we looking at by going to a 2-story versus a single story?
Well, I think on the construction cost, it's probably a wash. It may be just a little bit more because of the height of the scaffolding, which would be more labor intensive, and those types of things. But I think it'll be a wash, particularly with the property being smaller and those types of things. And you know, right now we're paying approximately $35,000 per acre on our property, and the property is being taken up. I saw there's 600 or 700 lots available right now for building. They're beginning to buy more property, and that's just one of the reports I saw. So property is going to be more difficult to obtain. If we can save $15,000 an acre on 75 acres, that's quite a savings.
Metal roof might be a saving, you said?
Yeah, we'd have 35% reduction in metal roof. Of course, the gym roof and those types of tall roofs, those 2-story roofs on those large areas will be the same, but on the classrooms and those areas, then that'll be reduced by about 35%.
Are we staying with the 1,000-student concept with the opportunity to expand, or
Yes, that's a very good point. That will also give us more room on our sites as we've known them for an annex or an expansion of classrooms, just like we did at Blackman and the way we've considered at Oakland Middle.
Perhaps in the design, we can improve. I mean, Blackman and Oakland Middle have both been somewhat afterthoughts about how the expansion occurs. With this design, whether it's at the elementary or at the middle school level, we have a planned expansion at Siegel High School that has never been done, correct?
That's correct.
And I think that both of these plans should have planned expansion capacity, where we have connectivity to the building, and but then also our geothermal and other utilities are sized appropriately, if not to handle the expansion, then certainly to be expanded to that.
That's right, in the core facility also, as a cafeteria, as a media center, because if you recall at Blackman, we had to expand those to service the annex.
I think perhaps the board conversation, and Chairman Blair, as you're asking about that 1,000 student, I think maybe we're talking about a more condensed design, but still 1,000 student population is the right thing. We're just going to accomplish that in a more condensed footprint, taking into consideration the increased property values and the efficiencies that we're learning.
That's correct. The footprint would be condensed, but the same area in classrooms and the core and those things would be the same.
Would, with a pre-planned opportunity for an expansion, would that work out better than the experience that we had at Blackman Middle? Not that we had a bad one, but would it be more seamless having it at
We can actually lay it out and plan it so that we have a more secure area getting into that part of the building. In Blackman, we've had a difficult time because of the transition between the building. As you recall, we have a fenced area there, and you have to have egress to the outside, so we've had to do a lot of banjo work to get the crash bars on so they can go, but they can't come in, so for security purposes.
So it wouldn't be an annex for the expansion of a new middle school concept? It would just be an addition?
Well, it would be an addition, that's correct. But the only thing that would not make it an annex, in my mind, is that if you didn't use it for a specific purpose. I mean, if you used it for all grades, it would just be an addition. But if, for instance, if you used it only for the 6th grade, even though it was attached, it would be a 6th grade annex.
With Oakland Middle, will we do the same design to add to that as we did at Blackman Middle, or would that be a different?
We'll have a difficult time at Oakland Middle, and it will be a separate building. It'll be separated by a common walkway and a canopy, just as Blackman is. We have a lot of utilities and things in the ground there that we can't get in those easements and things, so we'll have to back off.
I'd be curious to see the entire campus at Rocky Fork and what that may look like when both schools are constructed, and also when both schools are constructed and expanded. If there's a possibility that pre-design of traffic flow, and with both schools constructed and expanded,
possibly do we create interior courtyards or protected spaces that could be shared spaces or shared use or anything of that nature. So as all of these things are worked on, that master plan design is a curiosity of mine as well.
Yeah, we'll bring those forward for you folks to look at. And we're working closely with the town of Smyrna. I know you and Mr. Blair are aware of this, on giving them some property since they're so good to us on working with us on our fees and things, to accommodate them and transferring a couple acres for firehouse on that area, which is great for the board and for the people of Rutherford County. You have those emergency services that close to your school. But we're working closely with them also on the future roads around that. So basically, our school will have an internal loop around it, but actually on the outside, not very far off of that loop, there will be streets. And there will be quite a bit of buffer area, but once we get those designed, we're in the process. We got our topo back 2 weeks ago, so now they're going through there and doing the lot design, site design, and they're laying the footprints of the buildings out on those. So we'll take a look at that. I'll bring those forward.
I'm just thinking with our projected growth that we've got coming, why not go ahead and build these schools to maximum capacity? And let's just go ahead and do it up front, not do any expanding later. I had the opportunity today to come through Siegel Zone as is letting out. And Siegel Middle and Siegel High School, if you add any more people over there, you're not going to be able to get through there with the traffic if the city don't do something about the infrastructure. So,
That's a decision for the board, really. I'll be glad to do whatever the board and Mr. Odom's pleasure is on those. I think that we have to stretch every dime we get, like we always have, but we need to really take a good hard look at the growth in those areas, even maybe in more detail and a little bit farther out than we've looked at to get to the point we are now.
Some of your, of course, we've got some experience with two-story from Siegel, Stewart's Creek High. Your design for John Coleman will be two-story when we get into that. And we have the Blackman Middle at two-story there. And that's been interesting. You learn something. You may not know this, and the public may not know, but part of that second floor was designed earthquake some. There's some movement there, with that. An interesting little side thing of that projector's mounted to the ceiling sometimes vibrates with lots of people on the second floor or something. So even time you anticipate a lot of things, you can't always anticipate everything. And so you have to do some workarounds, but you learn from many of these things. The Siegel High School has some areas stubbed out where it was, if you look at the original drawings for that, it's dotted in where the addition would be. And so they bring out some of your water, your electrical and things, and stub it out at the end, so it's cheaper in the long run if you do have to add. If you've thought about expanding and where, to go ahead and run that stub out when they're doing the initial design and do it. So we try to do that ahead of time when we can.
Is there a way to get an approximation of increased cost from Mr. Young's suggestion?
Yeah. Of course, Mr. Odom and Richard, Mr. Thago could weigh in on this, but we'd have to decide how many students we want to build it for, if we're going to add 200 or 400, and then just go through the space requirements and, calculate it by the square footage, cost per square foot.
Were you thinking the 1,200 or?
I was thinking a 1,200 footprint is large enough for middle school. I'd hate to get much larger than that. And then, like I said, if you got 2 or 3 campuses right there together, you got to consider the traffic flow. and take all that consideration, 'cause
Would you want a 1,200 with, I guess 1,200 with looking at an opportunity for expansion if you needed to, or 1,200 max?
I mean, I think that needs to be discussed. We need to decide if it's 1,200 or, I just couldn't imagine going to 1,500 on the middle school, but
Wilson County, I think, has the largest middles maybe in the state, 1,500 to 1,600 at Mount Juliet, which is really tough to get them in, all in PE and all in a band, but it's huge. They're having some of the same problems we are now, of course.
Is Blackman Middle over 1,300 now?
It's 12 something. I have to look again and see. It's 1,200. It's somewhere in that range.
And what I'm thinking is that on Rocky Fork, to keep from sidetracking anything, we go ahead with the single story and the management of the space there for an addition. But on the new design, on the new two-story middle school, then we need to go ahead and just do the plan so that that addition is already shown there, or annex, or whatever you want to call it. And then at the point, we'll go ahead and fully design that. Then at that point, when we get ready to build the next one, we can decide if we want to include that area on there or not. That makes sense?
yeah, it's a logical way to look at it.
We looked at also placement on the property. You mentioned that. There's some too. And at Rocky Fork, our recommendation's going to be to put the middle school up front, basically because they're the ones going to have the baseball games and the basketball games, and so you do not have as much traffic driving by your elementary school there all the time and doing that. Actually, the city's going to put a road back on the kind of on the backside towards the elementary too. But anyway, you start thinking about egress in and out, just like you say, for traffic patterns, and maybe not having to drive by one school to get to the other one that has the most traffic anyway. So we're looking at those sort of things with placement.
And, of course, there's 250 houses slated to go right next to that school
That's a new thing since we started.
already. And so we're working with that developer also to make sure that, and the town of Smyrna, that we try to take care of that flow up front with the roads that are going in out there and access to Rocky Fork Road, extending Rocky Fork. The town's going to make that a 3-lane road. I don't know how quickly they're going to get to it. But then, as you recall, there's kind of a frontage road that will run up the interstate that is planned, and also access to the interstate. But Smyrna's got to have all of that stuff in place before the state will give them the okay to do the access to the interstate.
So as it stands right now, Rocky Fork Elementary will be a one-story structure?
Rocky Fork Elementary will be a 2-story, but the middle school will be a single story.
Middle school will be a single story.
Because if we just don't have enough time to get it constructed and opened prior to the school year, and we'd already have teams and activities in place, and we'd be moving people in the middle of the school year.
That doesn't sound very serious, but if you live through some of that stuff.
No, I understand.
What would be your best guess date of completion?
On the 1-story,
Yes, sir.
we will be ready to open.
No, I'm sorry, on the 2-story.
Uh,
You said design would be finished till July, is that right?
Right, and it could be 2 months later than normal, so if you're, whatever, we're opening in August,
Yes, sir.
Probably up around October-ish.
Yep, that would be unpleasant for everybody to be moving children in the middle of the school
And,
year.
you know, you never know what kind of winter you're gonna get either. And
Yes, sir. Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Clark. Number 8.
Number 8 is good news for us, and this is an information only. The Technology Department would like to recognize State Farm in Murfreesboro and thank them for the donation of 300 LCD monitors to various schools throughout Rutherford County. These monitors are replacing outdated CRT monitors in these schools. And we learned of this, and they did offer these to us. The nice thing about it, these model numbers are still some of the same ones that's available through Amazon and all now. Most of our screens, as my understanding, are 17-inch, where we put in the schools. These are like 21-inch screens and all. So I think Mr. Zago said you look $279 a piece at least.
$279. They should sell that model on a couple of.
You got $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 worth of monitors here, so it's really nice.
This is a really,
Good community partner.
oh, wow, just a very, I'm really just taken back by the generosity. Is there an opportunity to invite someone from the
We'll be glad to do
regional
that.
office
Be glad to do that.
to thank them personally for that?
Be glad to do that.
This is an outstanding contribution to our system.
That's exactly what we need, business partnerships, really. I mean, and we're putting in, Rutherford County taxpayers are putting in millions to educate people, and so they can hold down meaningful jobs, important jobs, and this is businesses helping us,
Well,
helping them.
State Farm has been an incredible employer in this county since even before I guess I was born, and a lot of our students and MTSU graduates have all gone to work there and moved on to other areas, and so you know they've just been a great friend not only to the county but especially to our school system in other ways too. So, but yeah, if we could invite somebody
Do
to
that.
personally thank them, that would be, I think.
We can't do it, if they couldn't come tomorrow night, we can do it on the next meeting or something. We'll
Sure.
try to do what we can to do it.
And thank them for their community partnership. Number 9.
Number 9 is our insurance update, and I'll read this, and Mr. Sandvig is prepared to discuss it some with you. This is the 2017 stop-loss medical, dental, and vision rates are presented, approved, and forwarded to the Commission's Budget Committee for their consideration. The stop-loss stays at the same $441,685 premium level as of 2016 for 750,000 individual pooling level with a 1,250,000 ISL maximum. Medical insurance will have a 13.8% increase on the deductible plan, a 4% increase on the copay plan, and a 2% increase on the HRA plan. Adverse claims history in the deductible plan is driving the higher rate increase for that group. The proposed rates are shown in the tab. Pre-65 retirees will have the same percentage increases as the active employees. The HRA plan is not offered to retirees at this time. Post-65 retirees will see a 2% increase in their Medicare supplement plans, and dental rates will be held for option 1 and option 2 participants. However, option 1 buy-up participants will see a 10% increase due to their claim history, and vision rates will go up 24%. Mr. Sandvig, you want to decipher some of this for us, please, sir? If you would.
That y'all have. We have had very adverse claims for the last few years in the deductible plan.
Your microphone.
Maybe I didn't have it. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay, I'm sorry. We've had adverse claims history the past few years in the deductible plan, and the copay plan and the HRA plan have been subsidizing it, and that's why the committee felt we needed to cut back, put the increase where it was applicable. All in all, it's The average was 6% we were talking about. So this is not too bad an increase for us to have. If you'll remember on the vision rate, we had to carve that out at one of the requirements of the Affordable Care Act. So that we're still establishing our history and all of that. We are self-insured in that one. So once it was a carve out, fewer people participated. The people who opted, people like me who wear glasses or contacts. And so we've had some adverse claim history there too, but that still is a small monthly increase.
I know in January, when most of the increases came out for individual policies, they ranged from in the 30 to 40%, if I recollect correctly. So I guess in comparison, this is certainly not on the same level as that, but still, it's just,
What are you hearing from private on rate stuff?
moans and groans. And forecast for next January, I don't see any improvement from what I read in the trade magazines. You know, I guess the increases are like our student populations. The increases are maybe smaller, but because the premiums are so much larger, you know, those increases,
yeah.
the increases actually turn into several dollars. So it's hurtful for our employees, because health insurance is, you know, is the one thing that they can count on that's going to increase, and that's tough.
It's unfortunate. We fight for these raises, and then our raises go toward health insurance, so that's what, that was
It's
frustrating.
for everybody. So,
Question for Mr. Sandvik, and just for clarification purposes. When you refer to the deductible plan, that's our high deductible where we're paying claims out of pocket?
No, that is, no, the HRA is our high deductible.
Okay.
And the deductible plan is our oldest.
Is it the richest plan?
The richest
I guess if
plan.
you look at it from the employee's perspective?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
well, you'll have an opportunity to look over some of this information, and Mr. Sandvik, we may have more questions tomorrow evening. Bring your info.
And the rate changes also include that the commission voted several years ago to drop the employer contribution 1 percentage point a year. So these rates will include dropping from 85% to 84% until we get down to 80% for a family.
Said that it's included.
It is included in the new rates.
Yeah, that's still, when you compare with the marketplace and private industries, it's still incredibly generous.
Has there been an opportunity to get a track record on all of the reporting? You know, the employees have to go online and register vital statistics and
insurance meeting, we asked that same question, and we're told that at this point, it was a very small percentage that had completed their wellness initiative, but they are going to continue to report on that each month and give us an update. You've seen the email that we sent out 2 days ago, I think, reminding our employees that they need to get that done before September 30th. So we have asked the insurance committee to make sure that report is given to us each month.
It's about $300 extra per year if you do not submit that required screening. So it's a real incentive there for you to submit the screening.
it's a two-part screening, isn't it? Part of it you fill out online, and then you actually go into the clinic and have,
That is correct.
checkup.
There's a blood work done, their biometric screening, and then on the Cigna site, there's a health assessment survey that you complete as well for yourself and your spouse, if your spouse is on the plan.
One other question, I'm just curious. The new mandates from the Affordable Care Act that change the landscape so much, for instance, the raising the dependent child age to 26, the mandatory you have to cover it 100%, the preventative, mammograms, cancer screenings, those kind of things. Has there been any analysis at all done as to specifically how much more cost we've incurred due to those mandates?
Most of our increase has not been due to that. The last estimate that our consultants gave, and that may have been the year before it went into place, but it covered the up to 26, the preventive care, all of that, was about only 3% increase. Our increase has been claims-driven.
Okay, thank you.
And claims and inflation-driven.
You would think and expect at some point in time that the preventive care would, we would see some positive results, in the claims experience because of the preventive care and the screenings and the blood work, seeing things before they become a surgical or a very expensive treatment procedure.
That's the plan behind it, isn't it? That's the idea.
That's the strategy, I think. So, okay. Anybody else? Look through the paperwork that we've been provided, and you may be questioned some more, Mr. Sandvig and Ms. Barnes. Okay. I guess we're at number 10. Kevin Hodge, do you want to wait till tomorrow night, or do you have something to do?
I don't have a whole lot other than, I think everybody has a copy of the latest copy of the TOS, bills and everything in your files. There, in looking through them, I didn't notice anything that's really caught my attention a whole lot. Mr. Odom, I don't know if you...
I didn't see a lot on this one.
I think they have suspended the rules, so they're in today.
The House.
Yeah, so they're in flow through now, and of course that one that we're watching intently is still on the clerk's desk. So
maybe it'll stay there.
Yes, sir. So, but read through these and everything. Thank you, sir. Anything else, Chairman?
No, that's all. So.
Number 11, Mr. Holliday, anything from Federal Relations Network?
There's a new Dear Colleague letter from the Department of Education, but I'm still kind of processing it. I'll forward it to other board members. We'll talk about it tomorrow night.
Okay. All right. We're now at general discussion by board members. Mr. Jordan.
A couple of things. Back to the State Farm. I would just think that there's such a presence in Murfreesboro, and this is such a just a terrific donation that they have donated to our students. Wouldn't it be proper to maybe delay the recognition of them perhaps until after, until our next regular meeting, not tomorrow night, but on up into April, and maybe have a plaque or something and present them with a plaque for their support for Rutherford County students?
I'm seeing a lot of head nodding. What we'll do then is we'll invite them back. We'll still say thank you. We'll just leave this on here as is, but we'll invite them back and actually maybe have a PowerPoint showing some of the monitors in the classroom.
Probably bring one in.
Bring one in, and then like like Mr. Jordan said, have a plaque and have a representative from the regional office that would come and be with us. Good suggestion.
One other thing, if I might, I ran into Ms. Haley, the principal of John Coleman at our reception the other day for the Teachers of the Year, and I thought I would just pass this along to you all. I don't know who was standing there. Some of you may have been standing there, but anyway, we were talking about our new building, and of course she's absolutely thrilled, and that doesn't even cover it, does it, Mr. Clardy, how happy she is? But anyway, she was telling me that day that somehow, I don't know how this happened exactly, but she was in conversation with some of the students, maybe in a classroom setting, and they were talking about great people, what made a person great, and who did they think of as a great person. And I assume that I don't know who they named, she didn't say, but I assume, Abraham Lincoln and people like this that we probably all agree on. And she said, got to one little girl, and she said, well, it's you, Miss Haley, you're a great person. And she said, well, why am I a great person? And the child said, because you bought us this great new school. And the child thought that, Miss Haley actually funded the whole thing. I told Miss Haley we appreciated it, and we looked for her check.
That's it. That does bring to mind, Mr. Clardy, if I could backtrack a little bit, the John Coleman design, is that basically our new elementary design? Maybe it's more condensed than what we would normally do, but is it basically our design now for the elementary?
We also, in that one, allowed for additional intervention spaces and all, which is driven sometime by either language or other issues, Title I's and that sort of stuff requires more breakout spaces. So he was able to incorporate in the design some flexibility where we could change and do some things in that. So this one has more spaces. It's not full classroom size. It lets you pull kids instead of putting them in the hallway for intervention or something like we have to do in a lot of places, to have a place to do that. So
Right, we took some of the standard classrooms and set them up so there would be 4 rooms, smaller rooms, and then if we needed space sometimes, we would have the petition so we could take them out and change a few ceiling tile and have that room. But as you will recall, all the little intervention rooms that Roy Waldron had,
Thinking about that.
just bunches of them everywhere. They
happen to be in locker rooms.
so we incorporated some of that into the, new buildings.
Mr. Young?
I just want to go back to the middle school project. What would it do to us if we delayed it for a year? I know Blackman and Smyrna Middle and Stewart's Creek are over one now, but what would that do to us if we delayed it?
It's just a matter of capacity, how much we grow. That would be your issue, I guess.
I just hate to see us miss an opportunity here to go with a 2-story design. If we could make that work somehow, that's the reason.
We're looking at, we're looking at the lack of portables to move to cover growth now. I'm just letting you know we have a real issue with capacity in that area.
Yeah,
now.
I know that. That's the reason we did the Blackman Middle Annex. So.
One of my biggest concerns would be shooting ourselves in the foot with the county commission.
Well, bid price might go up too.
Yeah, the price might
Construction
go up.
costs
We have to
per year.
readjust the pricing and stuff
Because of a time delay, not because of the 2 stories specifically.
because of the time delay.
Yeah, see, I just wonder, I know it's a terrible inconvenience, but I'm still, there's a fall break there that could allow for that, and I know some of the discussions that we had were, we're moving classrooms, and it's a logistical nightmare to go for 6, 8, 10 weeks and then move.
Not only is it a logistical nightmare, it's also an emotional nightmare in that those children started that school and they're there for 2 months playing on football teams and soccer teams and getting ready for basketball and clubs, and to tear them away from that school, I think would just, I think it'd be so detrimental.
I think they'd be lined up out the door wanting to stay where they are, at least till they finish up something. And let's not forget, too, that we've got bus routes to think of, too, which we would have to be entirely reorganized. I'm not really saying that necessarily.
I see your point, but I think it would just be detrimental.
Even ahead of that, you've got rezoning to do. And then you're going to take those kids and put them in a different school and with different teachers. And then once they get in there and get settled, you're going to take them out and put them in another school.
What Mr. Clardy's explaining is you won't disrupt just one group of students, and this is the discussion Mr. Clardy and Mr. Odom and Mr. Sandvig and I had. From the instructional point of view, if we're just looking at Smyrna Middle, Rock Springs Middle, and Stewart's Creek Middle, and we're going to move approximately 700 to 800 students, we won't have full mini schools moving from those 3 schools. So what you'll do is you'll have these quasi-mini schools in each one of those 3 for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but only 70 students from each one of those mini schools will move. So that means there's still 70 to 80 left that will not have the same teacher after we move, because some of the teachers will move. You will not only disrupt the 700 to 800, you're going to have an additional 2,700 students that'll be disrupted in those 3 schools too. So you're really disrupting somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 students, because I'm moving teachers. The option to that is to hire about 18 more teachers, which is about $1.5 million. So you don't want to do that. So I'm just trying to give you the instructional point there, because there's no way to build a full mini school and set it up in that building. If I'm going to have a classroom of 20 or 25 students, only half of those students will leave, and about half of those teachers from each one of those schools will leave and go to the new school. So those that are remaining will get different teachers for the rest of the year. It'll be a huge disruption for the instruction.
But I think we all share that same zealous desire to get them out of these crowded classrooms.
And it's one of those things, as I kind of thought about it over the weekend, it looked less and less desirable. But one of the difficulties we always have when we open a school is getting the commission to increase the money to cover the operating costs. If we were not able to open in August, we would substantially increase our operating costs for that year, for that school. And we will be hard pressed to get the 2.5 million in additional operating funds will already be a challenge. If that becomes more 4 million, that would not work very well. That's one of the reasons we're now in deficit funding, because the commission for Oakland, Whitworth Buchanan, and then, we did get some additional funding for Stewart's Creek High, but the commission really fought giving us additional operating funds. Well, you're going to have to do it through fund balance, so we have to make sure we save enough in a year's budget that we really could use for things, but save enough to cover that deficit. We need to try to work out of that deficit, not do anything that would increase it.
I'd just like to add, we're just trying to lay this stuff out for you, but we'll do whatever you want us to do. If you want us to build a 2-story middle school, we'll break our neck trying to get it built. But these are the issues we're going to be facing.
And this work session's exactly what we're doing, is we're discussing these issues. So, you know, everything pretty much is always on the table, and we want to have a thorough discussion and not leave any stone unturned if we can help it. So, I still think, good thing to talk about, Mr. Holliday. Thank you.
I was very much committed to it till we kind of got Joseph Binkley and them, the timelines changed.
Right.
Then if you have any trouble in winter in dealing with that, that was the other game changer, I guess, in it, so. Good idea. I don't, the timing, I guess, is our issue.
The timing was messed up, and, you know, we've had such a successful run here over the last several years. I sure hate to mess it up.
And with our growth, we've got opening new schools in pretty good shape. The rezoning is never fun for y'all, but as far as pulling staff, you know, the logistics, ordering furniture, equipment, and all that. But we really, those times we've been very tight to open a school. Siegel Middle is always the one that comes to my mind.
Missed out on that.
Yeah, but it was, you know, we were, okay, are we going to get the furniture in where that the kids could sit in? And it does, we get the approval late enough that we don't have a lot of latitude. Again, we were very worried about Oakland Middle because of weather issues. We're in good shape for this one.
Well, let's go back then again to the leftover funds from Eagleville. Did we mention that we're going to be able to take some of those funds and put toward the two-story elementary design?
We have some, I have roughed out an amendment that we've talked about doing it, something like that. We also need additional furniture, fixture, equipment money at John Coleman because the scope of that project got changed, and some of the things we were thinking we would be able to move into the new wing, it doesn't look like we will maybe be able to move them in. So there are a couple of needs there that we've got, but yes, that is something I've roughed out in an amendment.
Okay, and then did we talk about, you know, middle and high design? Was that part of the discussion at all?
We've got the high design, which is two-story, and we will tweak that design on this next go-around, whichever school that is. So that's in good shape. The elementary school is in pretty good shape. John Coleman, most of that design is done, and we will have to tweak it. But the middle school, those funds have been moved over into our next middle school already, into the design, once it's all approved through you guys and the county commission to amend all of that. Then we will start that two-story design for the next middle school, not Rocky Fork, so that when we're faced with this crisis the next time, we'll be in good shape and be able to move into the two-story with the new design and do the construction on it.
But that next middle school, not even design is funded yet. Okay.
It will have $300,000 in the line item once the amendments go through. So the design, a percentage of the design will be funded.
Could start moving forward.
Right, that's what.
There we go. Okay. Better.
Sorry, I didn't explain that very well.
Well, and the amendment has not come to fruition yet. We're jumping the gun, but we're taking advantage of the work session opportunity for conversation and discussion, and totally trust the amendment will come, but precisely done as you always do, Mr. Sandby.
We also talked about it, and Jeff, you can help me with the memory here. I think, you know, we talked about it's close to 3% growth overall the county, but that area was like 4 to 4.5% in that area last year. So in the Smyrna, Laverne, in that area. It's 4 point, I haven't done it since around Christmas.
I can bring up my file.
So that's another, how to accommodate those if we delay a little bit, might be an issue, numbers.
While he's bringing that up, I'll make mention, Mr. Young's suggestion of going ahead and building to capacity. I think it's smart. It's acceptance on our part that the growth is going to occur. I think in this particular case, that interchange with the interstate, I think that may be a trigger point that could indicate that expansion, that it may be the appropriate thing to build in preparation for the expansion, and then when we see that interchange come in, we know there'll be another surge there specifically in that location, and the expansion would be appropriate.
The Rocky Fork site kind of sits between Stewart's Creek and your Smyrna Middle area there, and then you got Rock Springs and all too. Probably the one that you want to overbuild, that's not a good term, I guess, but expansion will probably, when you go beyond Stewart's Creek out into the open areas around Amaville Road or something, because if you look 10 years down the road or something, very likely that's going to be the one. If not, you're going to be, when you have to do your zoning, you're going to be getting right up against the school, or maybe even going past it to try to deal with it, because Rocky Fork sits between two existing areas, plenty of students with just 250 houses and all. But looking 8 and 10 years down the road, they can't build a whole lot more right in there. I mean, the next one's going to have to be to the south, southwest, southeast, towards Blackman, towards Amwell Road, anywhere out in that area.
And yet, they will find a way to pack them in there, so.
True.
I heard this criticism, I don't know whether y'all did or not, but particularly with Blackman and with Stewart's Creek, that the board and the commission had built them too big, that they would open half empty, and it would be, and look at them. I mean, come on, give me a break.
You haven't heard that.
There's no such thing as too big in this county, So I think Mr. Young makes a good point.
It's a question I have for Mr. Clardy. If we're going to go back with the same design that you have for, I guess, Whitworth and Oakland on this middle, if you do somewhere down the road have to add on, just like Blackman, and like what we're going to do at Oakland and everything, will you go ahead and go ahead and lay that area out right now to where we don't get involved with having to move ball fields and all that?
Yes, sir, we will lay that out and make sure it doesn't interfere with anything else. It'll be a blank space on the property, and be clear of utilities and all those kinds of things, so we don't have to redo any of that when the time comes to build on.
Will you be able to run a lot of your utilities and just stub them off in that area, or?
Yes, sir, we'll make sure that everything's ready to go up to the T's and the water lines and sewer connections, those types of things.
I was surprised how good Blackman looked because of the height of the gym and all that. When we went out there and even added a 2-story wing, it doesn't look bad at all when you drive beside it. The concept actually fit quite well, better than I kind of envisioned to start with. So even if we do have to go back and add a 2-story wing there or something, too, if that's a choice, I think we look at it as a way to do that, to keep it.
And yet, from a security standpoint, if we can connect it, all the better, and leave the breezeway out, that keeps us hardened.
That's right, and make arrangements for, state fire marshal's requirements such as firewalls, those types of things as we construct this one.
For Smyrna Middle School, since Stewart's Creek essentially reached full point, we have added another 403 students in our middle schools, Smyrna, Rock Springs, and Stewart's Creek Middle. Once Stewart's Creek reached that point, we'd say was full. So we think in another,
So essentially about 100 students per each of those middle schools.
130 or so, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, so, yeah. The growth has been consistent in that area, in those grades.
Okay, good discussion tonight.
Share something with you too when y'all get through today.
The staff probably gonna want extra for all the work they've had to do from the table tonight, so. Yes, go
Okay.
ahead, Mr. Odom.
I received from Miss Nona Hall today, and Diane Mackey, who still works part-time for us, used to be coordinator of ELL, did go through, and she's, of the languages, so you have a copy in your folder of the languages in Rutherford County Schools, and people have been asking me, I say, oh, somewhere around 60 or 65 or something like that. But there's 79 languages here listed. And English is not included because so there's really 80 with English in there too. So, and it's amazing how many different dialects and languages. I honestly have not heard of some of these when I look at them. So we're very diverse. You look at the limited English, the LEP, a little summary on the sides, T1's 22, serving somewhere like 29, 14 now. Total of language background people 6482 from different, other than English, you got that percentage of your student of your 46,000 or
You certainly got our media
6,000.
professionals.
We'll give them a copy of
attention
this.
when
You
they-
can have a copy of
You
this.
said 79 different foreign languages being
Pretty
spoken.
eye-opening.
Ms. Barnes and Mr. Sandvik and them did meet with PSEG today, beginning to start the process of setting up the teacher leave things and substitute. I heard some really good things. If you want to hear it or not, it's up to you.
We did have our first meeting today. Mr. Sandvik, myself, and his payroll staff sat in with PESG to talk about our first round of planning in this process, and it was a very good meeting. We were all very impressed with the product they have put forward to us. We look forward to expanding on these meetings and delving into all the options we have as we build our program. There's a lot more to what they offer that we really understood, I think, on the front end. So we have many options to improve our procedures through our school system. We're going to meet early in May to really set up all of our codes for the substitute teachers, for teachers requesting leaves. We have an option to do online leave request forms for all of our teachers, which is really a new thing for us. And they have started the process of securing substitutes. They've already reached out to all of the existing substitutes that work through Advantage, thanks to Advantage for allowing them to do that, and have begun scheduling meetings in May to meet with all of our current substitutes that want to come to them and join the PESG team. They're developing posters, yard signs, billboards, and they have a lot of ideas for recruiting throughout the summer and expect to go live on July 1. So we have a lot of dates in place, and again, I think things are moving forward very well.
97%.
Chairman Hodge?
97, that's what they said.
I just wanted to make a couple comments on a couple recognitions. Coach Hawks out at Oakland, my understanding is just won 600 games. I guess Ms. Moore probably knows better than I do.
Missing the celebration tonight. They're honoring him at the varsity game this evening, but
I think those 600 wins, if I'm not mistaken, are all at Oakland. Is that right, Mr. Jordan?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
You've been around, and you really think about it, which I've thought about it several times. I don't know how many years he's been out there, but if you take 30 wins a year, 20 years, I mean, that's a lot of wins. And I just wanted to make mention that they were having a celebration, I guess, this evening, and I just wanted to bring that up. And then I also want to recognize Ms. Michaels on the fine job you did last week on Teacher of the Year.
You're here.
He stole my thunder.
I apologize,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. I know Mr. Odom said something at the reception, but once again, you did a great job. I know it's a lot of work.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Hodge. Okay, we've had, again, a lot of discussion. Anything else tonight? Okay, Mr. Jordan.
I just want to ask Mr. Zago or whoever wants to comment on this. What, 39 people, just pick one out here. 39 people, students speak Russian. That is their primary language. I assume that's what this means. Is that correct?
Initial language.
Initial language, okay.
That's what they filled out on their language form.
Okay. Now, they undoubtedly
That's
speak-
what they speak at home, is what they speak.
Well put. So in the classroom, they evidently must know some English as well.
The majority of our European countries and the Baltics and those areas, they come speaking English because typically they know 3 or 4 languages by the time they're 7 or 8. I was fortunate enough to marry into a German family, and one of the requirements that they have before they get to middle school, they have to know, read, write, and speak 3 languages.
What does the teacher do if they do not speak enough English to be understood by an English-speaking teacher who does not speak Russian? Or any of the, I mean, this is like the United Nations.
I was the principal at Smyrna Elementary, which we were the United Nations. We were various shades of people there from various countries. And typically, we would have another student that spoke that language, or we would have a family member or someone that could speak English, or a person that lives in that area. They tend to live in the same area, and we would have parent volunteers come in and help us on a regular basis. So we really leaned a lot on those parents. And I can speak of Smyrna Elementary parents. They were extremely helpful and always eager to volunteer and be in that building. They valued an education and the education we were providing their students.
This may be the most amazing thing that we do.
We have a multitude
It's
of
absolutely
language EAs
stunning.
too that we put in these schools as well. We'll hire, for example, Burma, the Karen that you guys were speaking of earlier. We have an EA that speaks Karen, and we've hired that speaks fluent English, reads, writes English, but also is very fluent in Karen.
Mr. Holliday?
I wanted to speak just for a moment about standardized testing that we continue to work on, and in coming weeks we'll have session 2 of that. I noticed that the governor and Commissioner McQueen have met recently with their advisory councils that I know we have Rutherford County teachers a part of, and that already they're making plans and anticipating how they will move forward next year. And as they do that, I'm grateful for our Rutherford County teachers that are sharing our perspective in those forums. But I'm also struck by, and I think it's important that we remain committed as a system to the testing program that we have in place for this year. But at some point along the way, I think we need as a board to take a hard look at the successful execution of testing this year and its potential impact on our students, and what we as a system will anticipate as far as those scores coming back. I offer that only as a matter of discussion, and lest anyone think that the board is not paying attention to that. We have 2 responsibilities. We have one, to execute the requirement of testing, and as a board member, I'm committed to that. I believe as a system we're committed to that, and I know Mr. Zago has shared with us in our last board meeting about the extraordinary measures by which we're moving forward to take to complete that task. But also, we need to make sure that both our teachers and our students are protected from any results.
Ironically, tomorrow is a spring testing meeting. Myself, Mr. Zago, Josh Kubley is over our testing. I know Lisa Bogle from elementary testing, which covers one of our students. We're going to that meeting tomorrow. I've told them they have to get me back in time for the board meeting. It's an all-day, from morning to afternoon. So I think we might have a few more, because they'll be talking more about next year. If you kind of follow the newspaper and some things that we've heard, we know that there'll only be one math instead of two parts of math next year. There'll be one at the end. They're promising it to be shorter. But I think we'll have more information tomorrow, and if it's something that you'd be really interested in, we'll share it. We'll know more.
Well, and as you go there, I would be interested in any of the other board members who would want to share with Mr. Odom. I will share with you that I am very interested in how the state anticipates that online testing will be successfully implemented. I personally see two options: that we either phase it in at grade level, or we phase it in by system. I have a particular degree of confidence in our system to be able to handle things and in general lead the way for our state. And yet at the same time, I have a personal leaning toward phasing in by grade level as a preference to phasing in across all the grade levels. Mr. Odom, I'm interested in your comments on that, and then also board members as discussion time. Because of Sunshine Law, we don't have the opportunity to talk about these things outside of this forum. And so I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but I'm curious.
Commissioner McQueen was asked that she had Mr. Wilson, or did either of you listen to it the other day? She had a one for news media across the state. Okay. And so news, and some of the people from news were asking her that very question. They're in negotiations with Measurement Inc., a number of other things. Do not be surprised if next year is a mixed bag. Now, whether the mixed bag will be by grade, or will a system be able to choose what grades they choose or the other, I think, and this is just Don Odom thinking, but I think, again, they may be looking for a way to not have all the load at one time like it hit in February, and kind of test and do. They might be happy to do some paper and some of the others. Of course, we don't know really yet how the results of paper and pencil. I will tell you, teachers in general said the writing part, they think our kids did really, really well. They spent their time, they dedicated to it. The one I'm hearing where the most struggle seems to be was with the math. That was in elementary, a lot of those grades from 15 to 17 or 18 questions, but they're multi-step. By going online, we're going offline. The online had the ruler and the protractor and many of the things you could manipulate and measure. They had to go back to paper and pencil, look at it, pick it up and do, and then transfer your answers back over and all. They ran out of time. So would not be totally surprised to see some of your math scores. In other words, the ones they answered, they may do quite well in, but if you have 4 or 5 questions you didn't answer out of 16, 17 or so, that impacts the grade. So I don't know. Math is my big question for next year.
Did I read the quote from Commissioner McQueen that at this point she didn't know that if it would be paper and pencil and computer,
but her answer. She was committed to ultimately being online. She kind of started with that statement, but then prefaced, "Are we ready? Is our vendor ready?" And they were negotiating with vendor and looking at other options. So.
Well, I don't know how they could have any confidence whatsoever with Measurement Inc.
Exactly.
after such a horrible performance in this first effort.
There's been considerable money spent to create test questions, which is basically with Measurement Inc. I'm not hearing as many complaints about the test question themselves, but just the operation of being practicing so long online, then going to paper and pencil, and maybe too much asked. One thing she did say in the news conference, that the test would be shorter. That was another good thing that they realized to cut back on that.
So, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, Ms. Moore. No, go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Chairman. So question on that when you say shorter, because to me, that's, putting all this online and Measurement Inc. issues and everything kind of to the side and looking at the subject or the topic of testing itself and the things that you continue to hear the outcry from the community and the parents that it's too much. When we've got kids hiding under their desks in tears because they're so frustrated with the testing process, this is not healthy to anybody. So when you say shorten, I mean, are they
You
talking
described
about
the
truly-
teachers just then.
Well, teachers, teachers too, I tell you what, I
Yeah.
probably would have been, but, so when you say shorten it, is that kind of
Here,
what
one
you're
of the
speaking
things,
to, or-
again, we just go into the press conference we heard, and I'm sure we'll get much more detail because the total time of that press conference was about like 30 minutes. And tomorrow it's virtually most of the day, from 9 till 2 or 3 o'clock. So she did say, for example, in the writing, they're going to shorten that some, and students will, after reading a document or something that they're analyzing, that they will then answer some multiple choice questions about that, which is checking for reading comprehension and a child's understanding. They would then follow that with writing about that. I actually like that pattern better because as an educator, you think, is the kid having trouble comprehending or in writing? And so if we can separate those two a little bit, and with some of the scoring, it lets you know better how to address or maybe intervene to help that student do it. So they were cutting back the number of questions, cutting back, I kind of thought, the amount of writing to allow some of that part in there. Then if you take in February and move the math totally out, I think science, because we're doing new standards now, all that's going on, it's online. If parents or other people want to comment, now is your time. Go to the State Department, Tennessee Department of Education website, make your comments about content, that sort of thing now, please, because it's a short window. I think the science will stay paper and pencil because we don't have new standards yet, we don't have new questions, and it's not designed for online. So I think, again, that one would occur in the part 2 or the last part of the year, May for high schools and late April probably for elementary.
I think as a board that what we would like to hear is the Commissioner's Office tell us exactly what's going to occur. Are we going to do paper and pencil? Are we going to do a combination of the two? Or, I think we would like a level playing field as far, and I would.
We'll
think-
share with what we hear
Yeah,
tomorrow
right,
with
that-
you.
That I think the message that we would like to, and jump in here, board members, if you disagree, but we would like the message to them to be, we want to know what's coming. We want to be able to prepare our students this time where they don't have surprises, that they have the opportunity to show what they've learned, to make their best effort. And if we could be assured that they were going to be able to know what direction that we're going to be placed in, whether it be paper and pencil or a computer or what. We just want to know.
Absolutely. I think when you look at the amount of time that was invested both on the parts of the teachers, administrative staff, and the students preparing for this utter epic failure of Measurement Inc., it's a crying shame because we get all those hours back and actually have put them into classroom teaching for those kids, we'd be so much further ahead of the game. This is one of the things I am curious about with the meeting tomorrow. Mr. Odom, I mean, is there going to be, or has there been, any serious conversation about repercussions for Measurement Inc., and are they still even being considered in the process as far as moving forward with online testing? And we've paid them millions of dollars already for something that was just a total
They were
bust.
paid, was my understanding, they were paid to create questions and all. That there's been very little money paid to them for the actual test early on because they were to deliver it in the online format. So the state had held up some of their payments for the testing, even though Measurement Inc. then had to go pay to have all this printed, shipped, and that sort of thing. So we may know more tomorrow night after that, but personally, I'd be surprised if they just left Measurement Inc. immediately, because it takes very often 2 to 3 years, when we went from Pearson to Measurement Inc., to create the questions and all, and that's a big budget item. My guess is if they can make it work, if they're happy with the questions and that sort of thing, but not happy with the platform, how can they deal with the platform
Right.
thing? Combo, paper, online, or get to the place you can do online?
I would share that there is still an appetite among our parents, among my constituents, for transparency in the testing and for parental review of the questions. And
That's gone through the legislature, I think.
it has, but how that it gets built into a proposal and a contract with Measurement Inc. when they spend all this money to develop these questions as if they are, coveted and treasured, and then once they're revealed, they seem to me to be of little or no value. We have to have new questions because those questions are now out in the public eye, or potentially.
ACT does that, SAT does that, they
Sure.
release the test every year.
Sure, but we reshuffle the questions or something like that. But as we have that discussion, that we not lose the emphasis on transparency for the parents. And then I would echo the statement, and I've used it several times, but Mr. Zago said, can we just do something for the state twice? If the state would just allow us to do anything 2 times in a row. And whatever the structure is, whatever the system is, it's not just knowing what it is, because knowing what it is, great, it's all different again. Can we do something 2 times in a row?
Preaching, I'll say amen.
There we go.
Well, I would certainly like to kind of echo what Ms. Moore said, maybe in a slightly different way. You got 180 days. And any day that you spend, any portion of any day that you spend testing, you don't spend it instructing. And I think this system, I think every system probably, is in great need of more instruction time. I'll just leave it at that. I also wanted to say, I don't know if you saw this or not, and it was an accident that I did, but I happened to tune in to the Murfreesboro City School Board, and when they were addressing exactly what we're addressing right now. And Dr. Gilbert was firm, and as far as I'm concerned, fair and brutal. I'm glad she wasn't talking to me. Okay? And then when she finished, Board Member Smith, Mrs. Smith, was a proctor for part of the testing, and the story that she related was a nightmare of what happened in that classroom and what she was trying to do and what the teachers were trying to do. I could never begin to relate it as eloquently as she did. But I did notice, Mr. Blair, I think you were about to close with this just a minute ago. Ms. McQueen did say that she hoped next year to turn this into, I believe I'm quoting correctly, I didn't know this existed, but I'm hopeful, a positive testing experience. Isn't that what you said?
Yes, sir.
I'm all for that. If we're going to do it, then let's make it a positive experience.
Anybody else? We will be back together tomorrow evening. Good work session. Be safe and see you tomorrow evening. We stand adjourned.